I see our next guest is like staging an epic musical introduction or something. I was let's go straight into it, Joey. You can just stay on screen here, because she's the one who hooked this up. But I'm really excited about this. This is a fun story, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Troy Moore joins us from Las Vegas, representing the Fremont Street Performers in a massive lawsuit.
Not in Las Vegas, from Las Vegas.
From Las
Not
Vegas.
In Las
I am currently, this is by all meanings of the truth, I am a mayoral candidate for the city of Las Vegas in exile. Right? And there's an internet video that I explained it on. How do I explain this? Because there's so many layers to it. I've been a musician, a singer. I had a radio show between Howard Stern and Opie and Anthony about 20 years ago. My day job was I was a special representative for the United Food and Commercial Workers and the Musicians Union, which is an organizer and an in-house lawyer. And how I stumbled onto that is I would find these union busters would sell themselves as lawyers to the employer and the employees. And I would look into their backgrounds. I say, these guys aren't in the bar. How do they pull this off? And this is going back to the late 1980s. So I found the loophole where if you have 3 years union rep experience or 3 years human resources, you could be a lawyer for the organization, the corporate, the union. I told my boss, he thought I was full of it. And eventually he made me co-counsel with his lawyers. And I said, these lawyers are overbilling the union and not getting people back to work quick enough. And as a union rep, we're supposed to do the job to the best of our ability. I said, well, hiring these bar assholes isn't it. They don't care about people. And so eventually he fired the counsel out of San Francisco that was like $700 an hour. And the night before a big 6-week trial, he says, you go in there, you get the judge to swear you in or you're fired. You told me all that bullshit for the last 10 years about being a bar exempt attorney. Here's your chance. Long story short, for over 30 years, I've been a bar exempt lawyer, and that's just been in my utility belt, represent, whether it's on human rights, labor relations, or whatever, government misconduct. So eventually that same boss was stealing from the union pension, and I just
want to jump into that topic just a little bit more of a bar exempt attorney, because because like I've represented myself in a number of criminal cases and have gone through a couple of little hearings where they go, are you sober and sane, and do you read English, and blah 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 blah, do you know what you're getting into representing yourself? And the judge has to go through that process in order to say, okay, you are approved to be a pro se defendant. I assume that there's some similar thing, like you said, you go get sworn in. There's a hearing, and then they say, okay, you're because they cannot deny any other individual the representation in court, right?
Well, see, here was the problem, and guys that are my age now told me when I was 10 to 14 years old about all the conspiracy stories and the things where you would kind of do this and move away from them, but the stories stuck in my ear, and 99% of those stories have come to pass in the last 30 years. So I coined the term bar exempt. So when you'd walk up to the courtroom to represent your union members, they'd go, oh, Michael Moore, bar number? And I go, I'm bar exempt, Your Honor. And they would sit there with a question mark covering over their head. Because I came up with the term in 1988. And so they said they would go on, and then especially in right-to-work states, I would take a law that was used to hurt union treasuries and solidarity's right to work, and I would reverse it. And I said, Supreme Court says the Bar Association is the union of attorneys in America, and this is a right-to-work state. I don't have to join your union. And I'm not competing with the bar attorneys, because most of the time I'm representing people that can't afford an attorney anyway. So long story short on that is years and years of when I represented the big unions and had big money, never, ever had a problem winning a case or pushing it. After I blew the whistle on internal union problems, I got blacklisted through the whole labor movement. I organized 50,000 people in my career into collective bargaining agreements and won over 2,000 cases at that point. And I was forced to make a living to go become a street performer in Las Vegas. I had written a bunch of songs of my own and everything. And I was like, I don't know how covers are going to go. So I started playing them. And I found that, okay, maybe this is a place I can exist since the whole system has tried to crush me and destroy me in my career. Not long after, I found the powers that be in Vegas, the Las Vegas Visitor and Convention Authority, Las Vegas Metro, the city marshals, the mayor, Mayor Goodman, Oscar or Carol, his wife, they're the Mayor Goodman Crime Family, as I've coined it.
Yep.
They had a meeting with former Sheriff Gillespie, and they had a plan in 2009 that violated Title 18, Section 241 of U.S. Code, Conspiracy Against Rights, to rid all of Las Vegas of street performers and homeless. Now, I would play my guitar and I would see the police harassing a kid, and I would take the guitar off and I'd go jump between them and say, why are you bothering this person? Well, the casinos don't want it. Mayor doesn't want it. I said, they don't own the goddamn sidewalk. He has a First Amendment right to be here. Stand down.
Hold on just a second, Mike. I want to interrupt here, and I apologize for interrupting your narrative. Please hold that.
No.
But I just want to share with the audience that I have some actual personal connection with this, having done man on the street interviews in Las Vegas, not Fremont Street, but on the Strip. Joey's done this with me and has seen a little bit of the police interaction with street performers. We've got videos of them from a few years ago. The guys who carry snakes around their shoulders and let them pose.
I think I've seen those videos online.
Yeah, and we've heard other stories from street performers when the crowds are thin or there's interesting street performers noticing that I'm there doing man on the street interviews. They're so fun to talk to. Really, some of our best work in Vegas and man on the street is with street performers in Vegas. It's an awesome group of people. I don't mean like just group of people, but sort of like bigger slice of society that is made uniquely possible in places like Las Vegas and New York and like the other places I've done man on the street, Santa Monica at the Pier and 3rd Street Promenade. You know, as much as I'm a fan of decentralized society, there's certain beautiful things made possible by those critical foot traffic streams in population centers. And one of the things that inevitably comes with that is every city has some kind of political crime family. There's law enforcement that is out there on the streets harassing and trying to control it. And regardless of your political ideology, you can see that there's a kind of protectionism at play here where it's all about competing economic interests. And there are those who want to earn their living honestly, and that's every fucking last street performer. Yep. There is something direct and beautiful and honest about that entertainment for tips or whatever it is in your I'm not talking about the 3-card Monte people. I mean like actual legit street performers who are there to put a smile on your face. And inevitably there are people who want to use government instead to line their pockets. And so Mike, I hope you don't mind that interjection there to connect the thing. From my experience and for my audience. So, but please, back to your narrative and how, I mean, that just intervening, because like I do that with a camera. You know, you see someone getting harassed by a cop. Anybody who's got an inherent sense of justice wants to fucking protect the little guy. And so for me, it's been with a camera, at least I can shine that spotlight, but you're doing it as a regular fellow street performer, directly getting between cops and their victims.
Well, that's what I used to do with the union for the meat cutters, grocery clerks, and even the musicians were with the big labels. I would step between the police and them as their union representative. And the wine garden rights actually allow that you're allowed to represent them just like an attorney or a lawyer. And I pissed Metro off so bad, they started taking equipment, and then I got him in contempt of court for Fourth Amendment violation. I said, hey, regardless if I violated a noise ordinance, this asshole took the tools of my trade, and I can't work off the Strip. I beat those cases 2013, 2014. I started looking into the motivation. Originally, I thought it was the casinos. It's a little different in that. It's another racket that's run by the Goodman Crime Family. And what happened, They harassed me so much on the strip. I said, this is stupid. So I went down to Fremont Street thinking that they allow it down there a little bit more, but they were trying to corral all the strip performers down to Fremont and then write an ordinance that would cut 80% of us out of there. Schedule us, give us workstations, employee numbers, shit like that.
Wow.
But before that happened, I was watching some of these semi-nude performers, and there was a guy in a Borat G-string, and he was standing there making about 75 an hour just doing this. And I'm sitting there playing my guitar, and I'm doing okay. And the Monty Python side of me said, what if I do that, play guitar, and strap a stuffed rooster to my lap in a G-string and call it Rock Out with My Cock Out?
I love it.
I did it as a joke for the first night, and it was so successful and so embraced by the people because I'm playing dead heavy metal riffs like the similar to Sabbath or Dio, and suddenly I became famous among the tourists, world famous, where my pictures were all over the world and everything, and I was watching this whole thing come together. So I go to the city council meetings. Fremont Street Experience executives are there, the city council, and they go, well, we're going to corral all the performers and we're going to create these workstations. This was June 2015. And I'm in a suit, and I signed up 1,500 to 1,700 of the street performers for authorization of the union. And I went in there and I said, I represent these people, and if you vote this ordinance into law and then carry it out, overnight, you become a de facto employer along with the Fremont Street Experience. And Brad Jervik, his retort to that, the city council was, nah. And I said, Councilor, not long is not an affirmative defense 5 years from now when the city's being sued for back minimum wage and employee contributions. So we went on and on. They passed it anyway. One of the guys that co-authored the thing, and at first it was a limited amount of controls. Now, I advised the city that I was the lawyer that helped the strippers in San Francisco in the late 80s be defined as employees so they could organize. The employer took all these controls and then said, you're independent contractors, you have no rights. I told him, I said, look, I did this for years before I became a street performer. I know what I'm talking about. So once they did it, I started sending demand letters for back minimum wage for the last 7 years. Every 3 months I send it.
Right.
Based on the schedule the city in Fremont Street keeps. Okay, you're working there for an 2-hour shift and then there and there.
Sounds like an employee.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
That sounds like an employee to me if the state schedule.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I mean, at a glance, it's an employer relationship.
Yeah.
So it went from, a double-digit employer controls, and then they started getting greedy, and each year took more and more. And then what they would do is they would do constructive discharges and terminations. They would hand you a ticket, and then you'd go to court, and before you got to court, you had 2 more tickets, and the municipal court judges were being misused as a human resources board of discipline and termination under the ordinance. And you would go in there, and I would get them to plead not guilty and fight it, and then say, what's your bar number? And I would tell them, I read them the riot act. They would back up, and a couple of times they said, well, you're dangerously close to practicing law without a license. And I said, I've never practiced law before. I'm not practicing law now, and I'm not practicing law in the future. I'm the president and general counsel of the union. This person has authorized me to be here to defend them in labor relations matter that can cause their termination. The Weingarten rights by the Supreme Court says I can represent them. So these judges were just confused and didn't know what to do. And eventually we beat the cases, but they would stack them. And they particularly went after the black entertainers, the young kids. And because there are really no infractions in Nevada, they were throwing them in jail for 6 months for having 1 foot out of the workstation.
Oh,
wow.
And the law would only give them so much, but what they would do is say, well, you know what, you got these 5 street performer violations. Why don't you agree to stay off of Fremont and the Strip for 1 year? And he got no jail time. But there was no law. You could go to the judge, prosecutor, and go like this, and still they couldn't do that to you. You had to voluntarily do it. And what I call it
bullying, right?
What's that?
Well, plea deals and bullying.
Oh yeah, it's racketeering is what it is. It's a RICO statute thing. So I would go in there, and originally the conspiracy between the mayor and the original sheriff in 2009 was to clear all street performers and homeless off the strip in Fremont Street by 2016. Well, the anomaly of me walking in there as a street performer who used to get paid the big bucks to fight this for the two big unions was something they didn't count on. And I didn't do it for any money. I did it because for the first time in my union career, I essentially was rank and file with these same people. If they could do it to them, they could do it to me. And I felt that it was my duty and my conscience, spiritually everything, to step between the police, the city, and the courts and do this at my own peril, which is coming to fruition per se. So we got a majority of the union, and they just kept taking more and more controls. They're up to 400 controls now. And every time we filed an unfair labor practice with the National Labor Relations Board, 2 or 3 times a year from 2016 to this year, the board would sit on it. Even though a lot of the labor laws changed to let gig workers organize that would have normally been independent contractors in the past, they would let it drag because, oh God, the government would go, oh, it's just those street performers. And I would say those street performers that are, by virtue of being in a public place performing, are protecting the First Amendment for everybody. Why do you look down? You got, from performers, you got every level of talent, skill, and background. You got people who have nothing, and you got people with college degrees, and you got people like me that are in between. And so they kept taking and taking and taking. And then in 2018, I got asked to run for mayor because I chewed the mayor out on a issue over the illegal tax on hotel rooms and what she was doing. And about a month later, these 4 guys in suits came up to me while I was performing in front of Binion's on Fremont Street and started asking me 101 questions. And I don't mind answering questions, and I'm friendly. So I said, "Are you guys offering me a job?" And they said, "Well, we watched you hand the mayor her ass back at the city council meeting over short-term rentals." And I said, "Yeah." She was wrong. She was unconstitutionally wrong. She's trying to put the owner of the house on house arrest if he rents his house out. She doesn't have that authority. They said, "We want to know if you want to run for mayor." And I just started laughing. I said, "I don't have the money to run for public office."
Right.
And I said, "Let me think about it." So my father, who ran for mayor for 20 years of a Bay Area city, he never really had an agenda. He just wanted to fight corruption. And he almost got elected each time, and he eventually died in 2015. So I told myself,
always almost.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, what you should have said is, I don't have the gaping hole in my soul necessary to run a successful campaign for mayor of a major American city and oversee numerous criminal rackets.
Well, what happened with me, I already knew what the Goodman's racket was because my old mentor told me back in the 90s how they came to power. And he was very well connected. He was more powerful than Jimmy Hoffa before he left office. And his name was Jack L. Lovell, for just for the record. But I decided the biggest problem on top of the street performers thing was the lack of water. So another family member of mine invented something. I found a solution for the water. And I made a 21-step agenda. I said, we're going to return the Constitution. We're going to operate by the city treasurer. We're going to operate lawfully instead of a racket. So we go in January 28th, 2019, and all hell breaks loose at the city clerk's office because they found out I was running. The lawyers come down. They go, well, here's our documents. And I said, no, here's my documents. Here's my declaration for mayor. Well, why don't you use ours? And I said, because yours are littered with all kinds of unconstitutional errors. I'm not waiving rights to just seek office. I get the Secretary of State on the phone. Secretary of State demands the city of Las Vegas accept my declaration and certify me as a mayoral candidate. That gets done. The lawyer gets pissed off, runs out. They put me on the city's website for about 18 hours as the challenger to Carol Goodman, who's the incumbent. The next day she comes in, she loses her mind, and we pulled Freedom of Information Acts, everything. They decertified me, erased me from the nominations, ballot, and election without court order, simply because I've been fighting the city over the street performers. So we take it to federal court. It drags. It's still dragging. And then we decide that we're going to keep running. We're not going to let this go. And we find out that another candidate found out a bunch of dead people ages 85 to 107 living in hospices and rest homes were a majority of her write-in ballots. So before the allegation of Trump's election being rigged, they did it to us. Mayor had a bunch of dead people run mail-in ballots in 2015. Steve Sisolak, the governor, wouldn't investigate it. Secretary of State, nobody would investigate. And then what they do is they just say that, Mike Moore has no labor relations experience. He's not a bar member. He wanders around on Fremont Street in a diaper. They literally said, we don't have time for him. Please, National Labor Relations Board, cancel the hearing to determine the performer's employee status. But they didn't CC me, and the board didn't tell me. I had to file a Freedom of Information Act about a year and a half ago to get the whole file. Over 9 times, National Labor Relations Board, Region 28, that handles Las Vegas, bent over backwards to cancel the judicial hearing to determine whether we're employees or not. Wow. Well, I filed another charge, and I got it in Washington, D.C. right now. I filed a 22-page charge based on common law, the ABC test, and another labor board test. There's only one small point that would say we're not employees. Now, I argued with the general counsel there. I said I want an oral argument because of the affirmative defense from the city and Fremont Street saying they're independent contractors. I want them to come in and prove that. I got 400 points that say we're employees since 2015. So what happened is the general counsel in Washington, D.C. is going to allow me that as of about a month ago. I think it was mid-January. So the city finds out. And on September 27th, 2000, they pulled me out of my scheduled work circle over to an alley, threatened me. They said I was performing during the light show was a violation of the city ordinance company policy. I was my amp lights on the police body camera show I was tuning, and the mute light was on. No sound came out of this, but they're going to give me this ticket. And they said the other reason is you pissed off Governor Steve Sisolak, Mayor Goodman, and you pissed off the Fremont Street CEO, and you pissed off somebody else. I think it was Wolfson, the county DA. And they said this, and I said, so what? I pissed them off. What, are they mad I'm out here in a G-string and I play nice guitar? They said, no, you know your fellow workers of their rights, and you've informed the general public of the 15 mask exemptions under state and federal law, because I had a sign on me. And they said, if you come back to work, we're going to beat your ass, arrest you, take your guitar. I said, what are you going to arrest me for? And they said, Sisolak Directive 24. And I said, there's no mechanism to arrest me for that. And I said, by the way, page 5 says, if I work outdoors, I don't have to wear a mask. And they go, we don't recognize the exemptions. Now I said, look, I already mailed Fremont Street.
We legally define the Fremont Street area as indoors.
This is our home.
We legally define this as indoors for our purposes right now because we say so. Whatever we may, yeah. It's incredible that they did that just so directly. I mean, it's the kind of thing you're like, oh man, we gotta get. Hey,
that's what prompted the video that you posted on YouTube. Yeah, is this the whole thing?
Yeah, that body cam's on YouTube, and it took me almost a year to get discovered.
Yeah,
because they gave me the ticket September 2020, and I realized if I went back, because see, they pulled me to an alley away from witnesses behind Four Queens Casino, no cameras. They had their hands on their guns. And normally I'm the bravest guy against cops, and I go, this is this part where the union organizer gets fucking killed or shot, like back in the 30s.
Yeah, I get away with now, but not at all. It's sort of harder for them, those, to get away with murder the way they used to be able to kind of willy-nilly just kill people who got in the way. But it's not unheard of, and I want to say that I admire your activism, and that in a way, I want my audience to appreciate, as much as I've been to jail and faced down cops, I have kind of deftly avoided going after individuals. And what informed me was Michael Hastings covering a few generals at the Pentagon before his mysterious car accident that he died in. And I'm like, you know what? I'll stick to the general wake people up, challenge the system as a whole in the abstract, rather than go after individuals who have specific rackets, because that's how you get murdered. And at least in this day and age, threatened like that and legally harassed is the equivalent. You are absolutely correct, and no shame in anything you got to do to protect yourself once that threat has been raised.
Yeah, it's not going to work anymore. And I've noticed over the years being a lawyer and a union representative, there is a parasitical phantom government riding on top of our republic. And everything, the courts, I'm watching this and I go, you know what, that is like an echo of the real government. And some people say it has to do with the United States being a corporation in the late 19th century and things like that. And that's a whole other story. But I've seen it, and it's here. There's
Sure.
They operate, and I evaluated the situation, and I said, I go back, I'm going to get beat up, arrested. They said they're going to take my guitar and throw me in jail. I said, if you're going to continue this interrogation, I want my union representative here under Weinberg. You ask for a union representative again, you're going to jail. I said, I want your supervisor. You ask for a supervisor, you're going to jail. And now I had my guitars and shit with me, and I'm like, I know what happens when they did this before. They break the shit and impound and all that. So they basically said, if you come back to Fremont Street, we're going to beat you up, arrest you, take your shit. So I get the ticket, and it's for performing during the light show. I go to court. They keep dragging it out. I filed a defendant in error because I have no contract with the state out there. And I said, unless you're going to give me a W-2 and make me an employee, we have no agreement. I'm not bound by company policy. And they said, well, you were operating during the overhead light show. And I said, overhead light show, and I play stupid. I got the prosecutor to say on the record, I said, what is that? And he says, well, that's operated by the Fremont Street Experience. And I said, well, that's commercial speech, and my speech is free speech. And the Hudson River decision in New York says that free speech comes before commercial speech. Your Honor, you need to dismiss this. I filed motion after motion to dismiss essentially what was a equivalent of a jaywalking ticket. The city has spent $220,000 on prosecuting me over 19 months. It's the only thing they got on the union president here. I don't break the law. I don't, do a bunch of illegal shit. I organize units. And then with this acceleration of the labor board situation, they held it over my head. And then what they did is they said, we don't want any jail time. We don't want anything. We just want you to stay out of trouble for 6 months. And I go, it's already been 14 months. And then when I was out of court, they sent an attorney in without my authorization, because I'd never, in like 9 months, I never entered a plea. Just motions to dismiss. This attorney, his bar number is 4528 in Nevada, comes in, says, I represent Michael Troy Moore. We're entering a plea not guilty. He leaves without my knowledge. He comes back in 2 days before I'm scheduled to be on the record, withdraws, and then a public defender walks up and says, I'm here to represent you. And I go, whoa, wait a minute. What's going on here? I never got a financial disclosure to see if I qualified for a public defender. There's no jail time. What's going on here? Judge panics. Judge Hastings. And he says, we need to go off the record. And I said, I'm not comfortable going. So he says, humorous, Mr. Moore, we have some housekeeping. He goes off the record. He dismisses the public defender. And he says, Mr. Moore, if you fight this and you lose, you're only going to get a maximum $1,000 fine. There's no jail time. And we go back in the thing, and the city prosecutor's office offers me what's called a submittal. It's on a piece of paper where it's printed, no contest, not guilty, guilty. Draws it in with a Sharpie and says, if you agree to a submittal 6 months out of trouble, we will let this go. And I said, what happens if I get in trouble? He goes, well, then you go to jail for 6 months. And I said, even if I'm not convicted of the secondary? He says, yes.
They're just going to come threaten you again and charge you with some frivolous nothing. So we all know.
Well, what was happening at the time is, in Fremont Street, filed a complaint with the Nevada State Bar, and Tiffany, a bar investigator, contacted me. And we had a 1 hour interview, and eventually I gave her the 25 reasons why I don't have to be in the bar. And it turns out the city was trying to get me for practicing law without a license. After interviewed me for an hour and a half. She says, well, can you just drop the ESQ off of one of your emails? I said, no. I said, why don't you send me an application to join the bar? You guys are a union. Why aren't you trying to organize? So she never sent me the complaint. I had to get it through a Freedom of Information Act. The city and Fremont Street were trying to throw me in jail for practicing law without a license, civilly and criminally. Now, she said it was signed by Brad Jerbick, December 3rd, 2020. However, Brad Jerbick retired as city attorney July 1st, 2020. So these assholes, all inclusion, the mayor, the people that work for the city court, city prosecutor's office, Fremont Street, and Paul Bloomfield, who tried to kill one of my witnesses in there, a guy named Jeff Hunt. Tried to kill him, and I submitted an affidavit because he was helping us. They ran 6 other people out of town on my witness list. So I'm sitting back, and I told the court that I have to leave town on September 1st to deal with my pension with the other unions, because I'm in pension appeals in D.C. and the Bay Area. They said, that's fine. I said, I can't promise I can be here. He says, well, if you take the submittal, it's over with. And I said, I'm going to go research the submittal, get back to you. Well, it's good till September 10th. Well, September 1st, I entered into the record, no contest. I pulled from the court record that there was a fine, $308. I paid it, affidavits, notarized everything, no contest, fine paid. I can't receive a fair trial in this courtroom due to conflicts of interest. You all work for the mayor who I ran against. This is retaliation for organizing a union and me seeking public office. Good day, I'm done. September 1. Late December, the prosecutor emails me and says, we'd like you to sign a waiver of constitutional rights. Way after the fact. He knew by the September 15th I pled no contest. And he bothered me and harassed me and solicited for me. And finally I said, under what city, state, or federal law do you ask for me to sign away my rights? After the fact, after the case is closed. He says, I can't give you legal advice. And I said, you just gave me legal advice telling me to sign this fucking waiver of rights, asshole. And I said, again, I'm asking you under what law? Cite the fucking law, I'll sign the thing if it's true. And then he goes, I don't want to talk to you anymore. And I said, well, goodbye. I get a call from a guy about 2 weeks later claiming, we'll see you in court January 28th. I have not been subpoenaed or summoned or even promised to appear any time in the year 2022. Case is closed several months back, September. So I contact Judge Hastings at Department 6 and say, I'm still out of state, can't make it, sorry. The Department 6 emails me back saying, well, Mr. Moore, you were supposed to be here January 24th. There's a bench warrant for your arrest. I said, that's good.
And that's why you're in exile, because you're avoiding the bench warrant in the city of Las Vegas.
It sounds like they want to run you out of town, too. I mean, correct me.
Oh, yeah.
That's the vibe I'm getting. They just want to, because it's an extraditable thing. There's no way you get a part. You get picked up for anything else in any state. They're not going to ship you back to Nevada for this. It sounds
it's. I believe it's a combination of two things. They don't want me to come back because they don't want me to run for mayor. That's not going to happen. I'm not conceding and giving up my right to run for mayor until the federal case. In addition to that, what they've done, and as union president, I've represented people who've done this too, is they write a bunch of capricious bullshit infraction tickets, which are low-level misdemeanors in the state of Nevada. They incarcerate people. If they're a troublemaker like me, a political dissident, or just somebody they don't like, and they say, you know, if you just gave up your rights to sue and stop this trouble, we could let you out of jail. So they incarcerate you and do that. Now, what's happened was I filed my motion to quash, 8 motions to quash with the new judge, because magically 5 days after the Judge Hastings got my quash motion, they parade him in front of the mayor and the city council, and they say, "Thank you for your service. He's retiring out of term before his term's over early, and he got a big bonus, golden parachute. And from what I understand, they even gave him extra pension years that he wasn't on the clock for." So then I get a judge named Nordstrom. And she apparently turned down my motion to quash. Turns out she assists the bar in prosecuting people who practice law without a license. One of the things they were going to try to entrap me.
You're a threat to the whole lawyer racket. You're a threat to the whole lawyer racket.
Yeah, I guess so. The thing is the people I represent can't afford them, and they're not doing pro bono work, so screw them.
Well, so hold on, Mike, because we don't have a lot of time left. You'll have to indulge me. I want to go back and touch on something you said, and challenge you to maybe go a little deeper with us before we give you a chance to catch up on where we are now and where you're hoping to go with this. But it is important to address this bigger issue of understanding of the nature of government. As you said, and it sounded really brilliant. Excuse me, I want to go back if you can.
Sure.
Give me the exact.
I'm having a little trouble hearing you, but go ahead.
Yeah, you said something about a shadow government on top of our republic. Was that Joe?
Yes. My own observation from being in courtrooms arguing with these black magic people, as I would say, even if there is no magic, they certainly operate by ritualistic magic in there, even if they're pretending. Oh, yeah. And colors of robes, things like that. Men my age told me back in the day that I've seen come to pass. This shit sounded crazy when I was a little kid. And what I've coined, I coined the phrase bar exempt attorney or bar exempt lawyer. I'm not an attorney by any means. I'm a lawyer, general counsel, or esquire. And what I see is there's a phantom government that is hovering inside of ours. And some people talk about the Admiralty flag and things like that. And all these other things that are very complex. I guess a goddamn phantom government is not the constitutional republic that was formed, and it isn't what we were told when we were growing up. It is a huge fraud. Well, so here's where I need to put you on the spot and ask the fundamental question. It's a great extrapolation of your statement earlier, and the sentiment I think is very important in waking up, but it seems almost naively idealistic to suggest that the core of our republic, or a constitution that authorizes a central bank and taxation and a standing army, and in its first iteration legitimized slavery, as somehow the ideal that is being denied by the corrupt actors that you are face to face with, but that rather it is fundamental to the nature of government itself as a coercive entity. To say that it is a shadow government on top, or a phantom of corruption on top of a core of legitimacy, it is to suggest that at its core, this concept of coercive constitutional government is even legitimate and has some hope of being rescued, rather than something that needs to be fundamentally re-examined from the ground up. If I understand your question, it's what I see is there was a republic founded at one time, and it was hijacked either by the District of Columbia becoming a corporation, U.S. Inc., the whole Sestakay, the city-state of London, and the Vatican. Now, those things all sounded like way out conspiracy theory 30, 40 years ago when I was told about it. But then as I go to participate in the republic as a lawyer of the republic and the people, suddenly I see these assholes not working for the republic. They're working for some foreign entity. It was one of the reasons I left the Democratic Party, because I worked with Harris, Newsom, and all those people out of Sacramento when I worked for the UFCW. And I went back in the 90s, I was going, these people don't give a fuck about the Constitution of the people. And, people coin it the New World Order and all that shit. And it's a bunch of greedy people that want what I believe is worldwide slavery and depopulation. Now, it sounds crazy, but if I'm in a courtroom and this shit's going on, there's something to it. And every time I win a case, the judges go from a black robe, they leave the room, and the prosecutor leaves, and the prosecutor goes out the public entrance but reappears backstage with the judge. They dismiss the case, or they say not guilty, Mr. Moore. But there's something they do. They change their robes to a different color than black. Maroon, purple, blue, all that. They're changing jurisdictions. And I can't get enough information on this to really nail it down. It's an observation I've made for 35 years. How come when I win, the guy leaves the black robe for a colored robe? So the reason I think this is really important, I want to bring it back to your work and give you a chance to talk about where your hopes are now for the future, because
trying to salvage something that is fundamentally corrupt versus, rid ourselves of the social cancer that it is now is really important. And I think, as obviously you are extremely well informed and educated and historically aware, I think what you're missing in the way that you talk about the Constitution is that it was always, the Constitution was an excuse to ignore the Articles of Confederation and the concept of government by consent in the first place. And I know that you're familiar with the outline of this history, but the reason that's so important in guiding the work of people like you and our co-host G.I. Mary Jane and so many other activists is that it keeps our eye on a bigger prize and ensures that our efforts are in line with these fundamental truths about the nature of society and government, because otherwise we might find ourselves caught in some legal morass. And I say this as someone who has dabbled in legal morasses myself and done altogether 6 months of time and as a result of my civil disobedience. And I've spent 3 years, well, it was supposed to be 3 years, I think, whatever, altogether years, whatever, of being on probation, where I can say the incidents where I've said, fuck you, I'm not even going to recognize your illegitimate authority, I'm not going to sign your papers, I'm going to sit in solitary confinement and demand my rights as a pro se defendant, go fuck yourself. I've ended up, I've come out cleaner and less, in less Sisyphean efforts that it sounds like you are at risk of getting sucked into at this point. So with that being said, feel free to respond to that. Have the last word on this bigger existential issue that I've introduced, and please tell us what we can do to support you and what you hope to come out of your efforts now.
Well, if I understand what you said, I had hearing it. There's a legal scholar in Las Vegas fighting the system on the level you're talking about, and he says the one thing I'm doing wrong is you're playing lawyer. He's an American national, and he's got out of that American citizen thing, and he's made real progress. And it's kind of like I got my 1 foot of mine as almost an American national, and 1 foot of mine as a lawyer. And he says, you're playing lawyer. You're in their trap. You need to get out.
Yeah.
I agree with him. The problem is I got 1 foot in the grave and one on the banana peel in this. I'm too vested. And the people I represent, I have a duty to see this through, prove they're employees, and follow up on their back minimum wage for 7 years, which is over $150 million claim, and at least get them the status and dignity they want. That's where I'm at. That's what I'm hoping. Yeah. I never wanted to be mayor of Vegas, but I did want the government to work right and corruption. And one of the biggest problems we have with Fremont Street is the Goodman Crime Family has illegal kiosks, no business licenses whatsoever, people working under the table, involved in human trafficking. And I've alerted government agencies who are peering into this, but between organizing the union, back minimum wage, they issued a fraudulent warrant to incarcerate me, so I can't give oral arguments to the National Labor Relations Board in D.C. Because if they incarcerate me, they won't let me out for that kind of court proceeding. And if I lose that, it's gone. The statute of limitations, everything else. That's why they've suspended my driver's license, registration, and insurance, and just tell me, come back to Nevada. And all these things. It's like I am the Nevada's phantom government public enemy #1. Nobody has got this far fighting them with no money in their pockets. And I got accused of actually coming as close as possible. And I'm only hitting the tip of the iceberg. I formed a union to protect these people and try to resolve this peacefully with the powers that be. Well, they had too many illegal rackets going on Fremont Street. I don't know if a boycott's in order. I don't know if a petition to make me mayor. Free Mike Moore like free James Brown. We're looking into the different options. I do qualify for whistleblower status, but I don't have a lot of faith in the government because there's so much money involved. We've had 7 federal cases spinning for 5 or 6 years in the federal courthouse down there where we can't even say, good morning, Your Honor, here's our argument. Even on the case to rerun the election, The judge kept saying, we don't know who you're suing. Well, it's fucking city of Las Vegas and these 4 people right here for rigging the election. We don't know who you're suing. And then even with my own federal lawsuit for my pension, because my former union's trying to cut my pension by 80%, but I have all my records, I sued them under ERISA. The judge goes, we don't know who you're suing. So what it is, giving you incomplete forms, and then what they're doing is just cul-de-sac, hoping you'll burn out. And the problem with is I'll start crying and licking my wounds like a little girl in private. And then I will get a fire in my belly going, these motherfuckers are breaking the law. They're criminals. They're domestic enemies of the Constitution, people of America.
I would just say they're creatures of the Constitution, products of it. But I don't want to sidebar with that. What you're doing is so beautiful and empowering, and I really applaud your work and everything you're doing there. Before you go and tell us how to connect with you and support your work, one other question I got to ask. You had your guitar out earlier, and you got it behind you there still. You're going to show us your guitar?
Yeah, that is my carbon guitar there.
Oh, that's great.
Made in America. It is. I'm in the room where I try to record when I'm here, and I was trying to think of a background. I didn't have time for a proper one. That's California carved top. I'm actually a vocalist, but when I was at Fremont, I worked as a guitar player because it was a lot easier just to play and amuse the drunk people. You know, I didn't have to, and you know, people want me back down there to perform, and there's no way in hell I'm going back there until my rights are restored. And the city is, you know, Mayor Goodman's in jail or pulled out of office because Paul Bloomfield and Officer Lipschitz, and that's his real name, of the mayor's secret marshal police, the Department of Public Safety, they're just beating the shit out of people down there that fight for their rights. I've witnessed it. They tried to break the neck of one of the guys that picketed with me when they boarded up Fremont Street. We picketed during the shutdown saying, open the public street back up.
I remember you were right on top of that.
Yes, 3 of us were.
Good for you.
This was one of the signs, and I don't know if you can read it, but it says public performers unlawfully locked out by Sisolak and put the performers back to work and all that. And we picketed for a while, and they had boarded up everything. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has ruled that Fremont Street, those 4 blocks, is public property. Now, I finally got through the Freedom of Information Act, the management agreement between the city and Fremont Street. They just extended it to the year 2035. There's money being shuffled. There was some things with the bonds for the light show in 2019, but Oscar Goodman, the former mayor's Mob Museum, had the Mob Museum put in stone in 75 feet in the intersection of Stewart and Ogden. The money came from those bonds. It was supposed to go to light show 3 blocks away. He also bought the building when he was mayor, or just after he was mayor, for $1. He kept it purposely empty. It was the old post office. And then, like a squatter, he was able to go make a bid on $1. It's so corrupt. And the sad part is,
like you could write a book off of all the things that you've seen, Mike. But for now, you do it on your YouTube channel, which I love. Do you want to tell people how to get a hold of you on YouTube?
Yeah, YouTube. It's put in Michael Troy Moore. You're going to find all kinds of things because I've done comedy, I've done radio. I had a band called.
I watch your stuff at. That's the channel I appreciate.
And if you see me in front of the city council on YouTube, click into that and then go into the videos. They won't list all my videos, but there's 42 videos of me fighting them. And the police body cam's there where you can see it's complete bullshit in the stop. And I thought there was a chance I was going to get killed there. So I kept my hands on the hood of the car, and they were given a message to get me the hell out of there. And then I have not been able to work since September 2020. And that's one of the reasons I sought this file an early pension, because they've been dragging this case out for the street performer ticket for 20 months. Now there's a warrant. A lawyer went in there, committed fraud and malpractice in their direction, entering that not guilty plea, and that is further complicated this. And one thing I'd like to say at the end of this is we got good press till about 2018 with the news stations, Channel 5, Adam Herberts, and another guy named Christopher with 13. And then
the crime family got to them, right?
What's that?
And then the crime family got to them and said, "No, you can't give this positive coverage anymore."
No. And what happened was after we beat a bunch of cases and stopped performers from being arrested for, they would block the sidewalk and the cops would hit them. We brought up Monroe versus the District of Columbia in 1919 with suffragettes. As long as they're engaged in a constitutional free speech action, you can't be prosecuted for blocking a sidewalk or a public thoroughfare. So right after that, they locked us down. That billionaire that bought the damn newspaper, the Review Journal, locked us down. They won't print retractions. They print erroneous shit, and all their whole job is to make the Goodman crime family look the nicest thing since sliced bread. And you know what? If the Goodman crime family doesn't like being called the Goodman crime family, these guys opened the goddamn mob museum because he used to represent the mob. And I said to him one time, I said, "Well, what if you represented Jeffrey Epstein? Would you open the kid tent for him?" And he just looked like, you're representing crime. You know, I mean, that, you know, and, you know, The Sopranos, The Godfather, that all had a sexiness and was interesting. These people are not sexy. They're not interesting. They don't even have any skill, talent, or vision. And soon they're going to run out of water in Las Vegas. And then where's the tourism industry?
Oh, they're stealing it from Colorado, remember? I read an article about that. So.
Yeah, it's...
Yeah, no, those people will... The predator class will always find a way to be predators one way or another. And Mike, what you're doing is really, really incredible. And I hope we can have you on again and promote your work at whatever the next appropriate case is.
Anytime, and this my experience has so many layers. It's hard to actually articulate it sometimes because I become the Rain Man of this. You know,
Yeah.
Came sucks, the Goodman suck, and people don't. It's hard for them to believe how many layers in there. It's hard for them to believe that, like you're saying, the predator class would go to these extremes to enslave, kill, and harm people and steal from them.
Yeah.
And hopefully, after I get this oral argument with the labor board, they're going to say, "No, you guys are employees." Then it goes back. Then we get to file with the state labor commissioner for the back minimum wage. And I have such a paper trail with Fremont Street, the city of Las Vegas, which they've never answered. They never said, "No, we don't owe you back minimum wage." They just don't answer. Certified letters, everything. So the judge in that case, if we get that far, is going to go, "And what was your response in 2015 to the back minimum wage? Oh, you didn't answer?" You know, and maybe that's, you know, not to be selfish for my own careers or anything like that, but maybe the logical conclusion is to get the employee status, get these performers justice, let the public know because there's a news blackout, and then go, "You know what, I'm done, I'm retired, you guys take care of me." Because they're going to keep enslaving people, and they are committing mislabeling independent contractors, involuntary servants, and human trafficking and slavery laws. I just brought that up to the labor board too, saying if they're not employees, well, they're voluntary servants. So everything's going to get really ugly, and I think they want to put me in jail for this invalid warrant in order to say, "Well, you better let this shit go and withdraw all these actions, or you're never getting out of here alive." I do fear for my life in that sense, not because I have any paranoia. I just know what they've done. And if you look at the history of the current sheriff and the county jail and the private jail and the Goodmans, a lot of people have accidentally died in those jails. And the feds investigated him in 2016. Oops, he fell down the stairs. Oops, he hung himself with a toothbrush. Things like that. So the main thing is we got to get some kind of justice. And, you know, these guys are violating every natural, universal, common law, everything, and nobody's doing anything about it. And I certainly am not.
Mike, I know justice delayed is justice denied, as MLK would say on this, but you got to stay alive to see it. And I hate to sound like the safety first guy here, but I encourage you to delicately sidestep the I don't know, the mouth of the lion here, because it's not worth your life. It's not, none of it.
I agree. You know, I'm a father of 4. My kids are all raised. I've got 4 grandchildren. I just recently remarried in August, and I would like to let all this shit go, but it's not to a conclusion yet. And seriously, I don't think they're going to let it go because I've cost them too much money and hassle, and they're willing to $200,000 plus to bust me on a jaywalking ticket.
So now have to admit that they're wrong.
That's it. That's all it comes down
And
to.
protect the racket, yeah.
No, let me say this, and you know what should happen is the city of Las Vegas should face a trusteeship and a grand jury. And everybody on the city council who is an accomplice to this and is looking the other way, because I've informed them all and they won't respond. Maybe everybody needs to be pulled out of the mayor's office, city council, all the city managers, the city trustee, a grand jury investigation about, because there is such a paper trail of corruption and money laundering down in Fremont. They would all go away if the federal government would do what they're supposed to. Yeah, maybe the DOJ will wake up. You know, maybe it's going to take me getting put 6 feet under to actually go, oh, they fucking killed him? Oh, okay, let's go look now.
I would certainly never stake my life on the federal government.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you know, when I was...
Yeah.
That's why the rubber meets the road about my point earlier. And that's why you got to step back and ask that bigger question about what is the nature of government. Because if you hold on to some fantasy that, oh, well, federal politicians are somehow less corrupt. No, they will, and Michael, if I could give you one piece of advice and really considering this and understanding your power in this, they will, like, the only reason a judge will ever hold a cop accountable is in order to maintain the credibility of the system to protect the overall racket. Your power is in embarrassing them and holding them accountable that way and shining the light. But if you target individuals and you put individual people who control cops and you put their livelihoods at risk, yeah, they take it a little
personal. And with me, I really didn't give a shit when I was a performer in the beginning what rackets they had going. I'm performing just to feed myself because I've been blacklisted to work a regular day job. And they came and attacked me and my fellow workers. I formed a union to stop them, and that's why they're on me.
That's the nature.
Sorry, that's our technical difficulties here.
Did you have any? Did you have any questions?
No. I mean, is there any other information that people need for how to connect with you?
Well, trying to think what email. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on not Twitter. Yeah, I'm on Twitter as More for Mayor, and Instagram is Rock Out with Your Cock Out, and then More for Mayor on TikTok. An email for me is Michael Troy Moore, ESQ@AOL.com. I'm probably one of the original people that got on America Online back in the day. My kids make me for it, but Michael Troy Moore at AOL or Michael Troy Moore ESQ@AOL.com. I think it is my purpose to disseminate as much information as I can, and maybe it'll help other people. The main thing is, they said you can't fight City Hall, and I always said you got to have balls to fight City Hall. And on top of it, if you're right, why not fight it? But the problem is too many people are surrendering with this whole pandemic bullshit and violation of the every right there. They just rolled over us, and they're still rolling over us. And then people are saying things about, well, we need to stand with this country over there. I go, you didn't stand with this country in the last 2 goddamn years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know, I was having standoffs with the police over the mask thing. Now I had a medical reason, but at the same time, they didn't have a right to put the face prison on me.
Yeah,
and I that was the other thing during the arrest for the street performer ticket. I pissed off the governor. He actually drove by me at Casino Center. I had a sign that says Sisolak sucks, and I was pointing at the rooster on my lap, and he saw it at the stoplight. It wasn't 4 days later I got shaken. And there's actually I did a song, Sisolak sucks the cock, and it's just me gyrating, pointing at the Sisolak sign. But you know what? That's the one thing I have. They can't create anything. They don't have the power of creation. I do have that, whether I can create good stuff or not. And that's been the best weapon I've had. They always told me Rock Out with My Cock Out was going to harm me. That's where I got the support, because people see, well, this guy's funny like Monty Python, but shit, he can rip like Tony Iommi. And he knows rights. You go, and it's like when you look at these people being mayor of the Party City, USA, and they're in their mid 80s, it's like, what kind of fucking party are these old hags doing? You need younger people. You probably even need somebody younger than me to be mayor of Las Vegas, because I'm getting up there, and but the nice part is every time they piss me off with some petty thing or misstep in the law, a couple of days later I get back up and swing.
Well, Michael, you give me hope that Vegas could experience a legitimate revival if you are truly ultimately successful one way or another. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you so much for all your work.
Thank you for having me, because 3 years of a news blackout has been a motherfucker.
I know, you have a lot to say. I can tell. I understand. It's a long, intense, complicated story. We'll be following up with you, Mike.
Well, I'm thinking of producing a documentary on this. Our union's called the Sonic Labor and Visual Entertainers Union, which is SLAVE, the Slave Union. And I'm thinking of calling a working title The Slave Union, 10 Years of Slavery in Las Vegas. Because everything's documented.
Awesome.
Hey, guys, thank you for everything.
All right. That was unexpectedly rich and fun. But yeah, like you can tell, he's just, you guys, yes. And it's like, yeah,
so many. I mean,
I'm glad. I want everybody who saw that interview to connect with Michael Troy Moore one way or another. Follow him, connect with him. If you're in the area, if you support that work, yes, it is. That's what it is. Follow him on YouTube.
The Slave Union on YouTube for our audio.
I mean, I can keep going on this because I'm excited about Las Vegas revival and thinking, you know what? It's so much more than that, because of humanity. If Michael can be successful and America can take back Vegas, then humanity can take back that deeper spirit. That's a really beautiful thing. So